Welcome to Worth the War. My name is Kimmy. The purpose of this channel is to help prepare people to love well and avoid abuse. If you think we can do a better job with love and relationship than we're currently doing, then you've found the right place. Today's video is the beginning of a series on narcissism. The goal of Worth the War is to help prepare people for healthy love and relationship and to be able to identify and avoid abuse. I can't think of a better topic than narcissism for us to understand from a layperson's position what exactly we need to be looking for and how we can respond to people who are higher on the narcissistic scale. I look forward to sharing these with you. It's a pretty short video, but we will add to it other videos that will be able to equip us in other areas about how to identify and deal with narcissism. So let's get right into it. One of the best ways to be able to know how to respond to something is to be able to really understand what exactly it means. Being a narcissist sometimes in our culture is just confused with being a total jerk. And that isn't at all what a narcissist is. In fact, a narcissism, according to this really great book called Rethinking Narcissism by Dr. Craig Malcolm, which I will cite down on the bottom in the notes, is essentially a scale. And if you're too far up into narcissism, if you're way up in the high ranges, you may be a diagnosable narcissistic personality disorder person. Most of us live somewhere in the middle. And if we're on the other end where there's hardly any narcissism, that can be just as dangerous as someone who's on the high end. Because if we don't think we have a sense of value, a sense of being special, a sense of being unique, we are often closed off and depressed and unable to function in society. So we need to stop thinking about narcissism as some kind of horrible trait and start seeing it as a scale that all humanity lies somewhere on, so that we understand that when we're seeing a narcissistic trait, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're seeing a narcissist. So let's give you some practical information so that you can step back and be able to look at somebody and say, are they just acting a little bit in the narcissistic range, or are there possibly bigger problems here? We need to really humbly approach the fact that people who are clinical psychologists will admit that sometimes it's hard to figure out where somebody is on the scale of narcissism. So we need to know that we're not really equipped to be able to diagnose somebody as a narcissist, as a diagnosable narcissist. But what we can do is look at the criteria that they use and see, are we seeing a lot of this criteria in this person? Because if we are, that should make us pause and ask ourselves, is this person really emotionally healthy? So let me give you a few of those so that you can have them in your back pocket as you approach people that you think might possibly exhibit some qualities of narcissism. Number one, they will often have a grandiose sense of self-importance. Often they will have preoccupations with fantasies of unlimited success, power, brilliance, beauty, or ideal love. Often they will believe that they are special and unique, and that because of that they should only associate with people of equal high status and esteem. They will often have a need for excessive admiration and a sense of entitlement. They will often exhibit interpersonally exploitative behavior, and this one's a very big one, a lack of empathy. Remember, there's a couple different levels of empathy, and it's important to be able to tell the difference between somebody who responds out of care for somebody else and a knowledge of how their behavior will affect somebody else, and somebody who responds because they think they should respond with empathy. This kind of cold empathy is this idea that maybe they'll say, "aw," or "that's a shame," but you can tell that there's really no registry to how that other person is feeling. It's almost as if they feel they need to respond that way because socially it is very odd to hear about somebody else's pain and be completely unconcerned with it. So be aware that somebody saying that they are empathetic or saying words that appear to be empathetic may or may not mean that there is true empathy there. They may exhibit a sense of envy of others or have a sneaking suspicion that other people are consistently envious of them. And lastly, look for a demonstration of arrogant or haughty or prideful behavior. Sometimes it's the way they can carry themselves or the way that they will act when they're in a room. They expect other people to give them deference. So look for that kind of arrogant, cocky look, and you'll get a sense that maybe there's something a little bit off there as well. So now we have some good markers that will help us to identify where somebody lays on the scale of narcissism. But we need to be practical and understand that we really think that only half of 1% to 1% of the population is actually diagnosable narcissist. So in that case, that means everybody else that's anywhere in the middle range can actually adjust where they are on that scale. So they're not lost causes at that point. We need to stop thinking of people that are narcissistic and they have some attitudes like that as being complete lost causes. Now, I'm not suggesting that someone who's in the higher end of the scale is actually somebody you want to be in a relationship with. As we said before, they don't coexist well. There's really very rarely any desire on their part to get help and to change the things that they do. So we need to step back and say, if they're just showing some narcissistic traits, then we can probably work with that. I wanted to stop for a second and say, if you are questioning that the person that you're involved with might possibly be a narcissist, it's important not to bring up the fact that you're looking into that about them. Yes, it's very true that most people are not NPD, diagnosable narcissistic personality disorder, but the fact that the person that you are concerned about might be would mean that you definitely don't want to confuse things by bringing that term up and letting them know that you're questioning that. Because if they are on that range, they could use that information against you, and you might find yourself in a more dangerous situation than you already are. So it's important that if you think that you're in love with somebody and in a relationship with someone who possibly is on the very high end of this scale, that you get some professional help so that you can emotionally and physically stay safe during this process. Now, if we think about the fact that as long as there are empathetic people, there's going to be narcissists preying on them. So we need to be able to, if we are empathetic, if we have a heart that wants to help people, then we need to be aware that we are going to be food for the narcissist. So how can we identify when somebody is so high in the range that we're actually not going to be able to have a relationship with them, but rather it's going to be a destructive relationship for us? Well, one of the things we can do is understand that, and when we see those traits, have our flags go up and say, I need to see if they're willing to change any of these behaviors, because if they're not, it's probably not a healthy relationship for me. So we've learned here that there are some things we can look for that are really practical, that we can identify where somebody is on the narcissistic scale, and to be able to make really hard decisions about whether or not it's going to be somebody we can build a healthy love and relationship with. One of the things that we're going to learn in our next video is exactly how to identify in cultures and groups when you see narcissistic traits, so that we, as being people that want to develop healthy relationships, both in and out of our intimate relationships, have to be able to identify those things in groups and with other people so that we can know how to respond to them in a way that will not deplete us and that will not make us unable to live our lives in a peaceful and healthy way. So I look forward to sharing that with you next week. So we'll get into that. And then after that, we're actually going to hit some really strong ways that parents can avoid developing narcissistic traits in their children. So the next couple of videos are going to be really fun. I really hope you'll come back and join. If you're finding any value in what it is we're doing here, please press the subscribe button. We are developing a community that's going to raise our collective voice for healthy love and relationship, and we're going to help people avoid abuse and spare some hearts along the way. So I look forward to sharing that journey with you. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you next week.